In this clip, we're going to set up the blend tree value through script. I would like to just offer you a challenge. Technically, you already know how to do this. It is the same principle as what we use to set the bool value of our condition. Remember, is walking? You can actually figure this out. You just need to think about the data type that you're going to be using. Now, if you would like to pause here and try experimenting on your own, go ahead and do that now. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we can set that float value and what do we have to tie it to. So what we wanted to do is we wanted the NavMesh agent velocity to drive our blend tree. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use a line of code, which we've already seen once. We're going to type in the line of code anim.set, and then you'll notice that we have lots of these different parameters, or variables or methods that we can use. Now in this case, we're using the setFloat method. The reason that we want to use the setFloat method is because the blend tree value that we created, which was called player velocity, is a float data type. So we're going to do it just like we did before. You're going to open parentheses, and then you need to give it the variable name or the parameter name. So open quotations, and then we're going to type in player velocity. Remember, this must match exactly as you have it in the animator. Then we're going to come outside of the quotations, and we're going to do a comma, and then we need to give it a value. So we're going to tie it to the NavMesh agent's velocity. To do this, we'll type in NavMesh agent, and whoops, let's go back there. NavMesh agent, let me try typing that in one more time. There we go, and I'm going to hit enter. Dot velocity. And then we need to end with a semicolon. Now looking at this, you'll see that there is a problem with this. The problem is that NavMesh agent.velocity is actually getting a vector3 value. But we're trying to convert that to a float value. And so this won't actually work. Now, one thing that we can do is we can separate out the different vector values, so the x value, the y value, or the z value. Those values are actually floats. So let's take a look at our console. Remember the console, we printed out the message. This entire piece of data is a vector, but a vector is actually made up of 3 float values. So here is the x float value, the y float value, and the z float value. The z is the forward direction of our player, and that's actually what we would like. So what we're going to say, instead of dot velocity, let's do dot velocity dot, and then we have the availability to use z. And that will give us the float value. If you hover over that, you'll see that this is the float vector3.z. So it's the z component of the vector. Now let's hit Control S to save that. And again, you'll notice that we don't have the squiggly line letting us know that there's some sort of error happening. And then we'll go into Unity, and let's try this out. So let's hit play. You'll notice that the player character is animating. We're still printing out our message. Let's left click at any point. Now you'll see that something is not happening. The animator, it moved forward, but it didn't give us any sort of walking. It didn't provide any sort of running at all. So what we need to do is we need to take a look at our script because something is still not there. So let's hit play, and let's take a look at our animator. So what has actually happened is we didn't actually hook up the blend tree to our transitions and our conditions. So what we need to do is we need to go into the base layer, and then what we're going to do is we're going to allow the blend tree to be the default state here. So I'm actually going to remove these, and now the blend tree is the default. Now you could rename this. Let's just simply call this locomotion and hit enter. Now we should see this value change. So now if I were to come in and hit play, we'll see the idle animation is working, but then if we left click, now you'll see that those values are changing. You'll notice that something, whoops, it looks like something has broken there. There we go. So now we have another issue here. The issue that we're having, if we look at what is being printed out here, is we're actually getting negative values being printed. It's important to know that the velocity that we're getting from our script is giving us the world direction value of that. And what we want is actually the local velocity of our NavMesh agent. So now that we've started to get all of this together, I want to take some time to talk about how we can debug this problem and how we can fix it.